why don't we dive in with just that 1-minute refresher of what the Stanford MSX program is. So at the end of the day, the Stanford MSX program, it is a full-time 1-year on-campus Masters of Science in Management program at Stanford GSB. And so during that year, our students are encountering business fundamentals in the core curriculum, but then they get to start to customize that experience through electives, which they are able to take both from the GSB, but also from the other Stanford schools, such as the School of Medicine or the law school. But as a Stanford MSX student, they're getting access to all of the GSB clubs and activities. And as we will hear from both Courtney, Matt, and Jen, it's also a really family-friendly community. So our partners and their families have a lot of access to Stanford as well, which we'll learn a little bit more about. And the folks that you'll be studying alongside, they have about 13 years of work experience, and they're coming from over 30 plus countries, which apparently the word is cut off right now on my slide here, and from over 40 different industries. So it's really a great dynamic group of folks that you'll be studying alongside. So without further ado, I'd love to invite Courtney, Matt, and Jen to join me here on camera. Hello.
Hi.
So glad to see you all. Good morning. So before we dive into the official questions, I'd love to have you all just give a very brief overview of just who you are, why have I asked you to join us here, and just maybe a fun fact about yourself.
You want to start?
Sure. We came to MSX with 3 kids. Sorry, my name's Jennifer to start. And then we came to MSX with 3 kids and ended up having a 4th one, the day before your last quarter, and quarantine had just started. So we had a great experience with all of our 4 kids there, and we absolutely loved it.
And I'm Matt. I came to Stanford. I was actually a creative director for advertising and innovation agencies prior to Stanford. During my time there, I pivoted into software for virtual meetings. We live in Colorado now, but think of Miami as home.
Fantastic.
Hi, I'm Courtney Payne. I'm the Director of Student Life here, and I've been with the school a long time. I'm currently sitting in my office right here on Stanford's campus, and I live in Redwood City. I have 2 children myself. In student life, our mission is about student support and well-being. So we support academic performance and learning, and we also support you in like I said, your well-being. So when life gets in the way of school, school gets in the way of life, that tends to be when we come in. I think the relevant fun fact about me is that I went to graduate school myself at 40 with 2 young kids. I think I had a 3-year-old and a 6-year-old at the time, and a partner who traveled unpredictably and a lot. And I was also working full time. So I have a lot of empathy for having a family while being in graduate school.
Fantastic. Thank you guys for that introduction. I think you can all tell by joining us that we have like the best panelists already to speak to this topic. So at the end of the day, what we're hoping that you get from this webinar, our objective is just to give you a bit of insight as to what are some of those resources, what's that family and student life experience, what's that intersection here at the GSB, so that you have a bit more understanding of what it might be like if you're thinking of coming to the MSX program, bringing either a partner or bringing your partner and children to this program. So I want to first start off with Courtney. I think, as the director of student life, would love if you can give us a bit of insight as to what's appealing and unique about living on campus and at Stanford.
Well, Matt and Jen should also jump in on this one too, because I haven't lived on campus, but they have done it. So, but one of the things that I think is unique about what we have here at Stanford is that you can live on campus. I relative to a lot of other places, Stanford is one of the largest housing providers. We house a massive number of not just the undergraduate population, which is pretty common in the U.S., but also the graduate population. The quantity of graduate housing available at Stanford is pretty remarkable, and that's not just single student housing. That's couples housing and family housing, and particularly for the family housing, that's the area where I tend to hear from students most about what's really making their experience special, because of the way that the communities in family housing are arranged.
Thanks, Courtney. Matt, Jen, would you like to add something since you actually have lived on campus? What's special about that experience?
I think, what Courtney said is exactly right. You kind of have built-in babysitters, right? Like this summer, Matt kept saying, why won't the kids go outside and play? Why won't they go outside and play? And at Stanford, we couldn't get them to come in. They were outside with their friends. It's a very safe environment. Everything's gated. So they would play outside and they had a blast and they made wonderful friends.
Yeah, it's definitely like, for the family, I think maybe the partners and kids have even better experience than the students, because it's remarkable to live in a little community like that, where every set of apartments circles a playground, and there's just children running around playing all day long. It's pretty magical.
Yeah, so I'm going to go a bit off script here and maybe mix this up a bit. I want to understand maybe from Matt and Jen, as you were thinking about making this transition to the MSX program, what were those considerations that you evaluated? And how did you come to that decision? And then Courtney will follow up with you here.
Yeah, I think for us, we kind of knew we weren't going to come back to Miami after the program. And Jen had sort of already paused her career. She was doing an online MBA. And so for us, the decision was fairly simple. I think for other students, it's a harder decision, and I don't think there's a right answer. But I think the best thing we offer is some insight into why we chose to bring the whole family. And I think the biggest thing is we just wanted the whole family to experience this. We wanted to have a year where we just shared in this experience. And I think the magic of Stanford is it's not just a program for the student, but there's so much there for the partners and the children. Our daughter runs around in her Stanford shirt and basically acts like she went to Stanford. I don't think she knows the difference between being a student and the experience she had there. She knows all the buildings. She knows all the sports teams. She has her friends. Her school was on campus and it was a remarkable school. And so our sort of decision was we wanted to have an adventure as a family. And because we were able to do that, we did. And it was just one of the more magical years of our lives. It was amazing.
Anything you would add, Jen? Matt just alluded to a bit of, some of the resources and the experiences available as a partner. Can you give us a bit of insight as to kind of what your experience was?
Of course. As he said, I had actually finished my MBA 2 weeks after your classes started, I think, or after we got there. And then I took advantage of a lot of the continuing education classes that they had. So we just kind of scheduled babysitting or watching the kids. So I was able to kind of take advantage of a lot of the opportunities there at Stanford as well. And then we also had our preschooler. He was at Bing, which was just an amazing experience for that age of kids. And we were able to, we bought one because we had 3 kids at the time, and we were worried about them walking to the dining hall and things like that. So we ended up buying a cargo bike, and we would just ride our bike to school and to the dining hall. And it was just a really neat experience for all of us.
Thank you for that, Jen. Courtney, and as Director of Student Life, how does the GSB support families and partners in to allow Matt and our fellow students to really succeed in the classroom?
Gosh, I mean, support is a lot of things. Support takes many forms. I'll just maybe give you a couple of anecdotes of things I've been doing just in the last couple of weeks, supporting the MSX students who are here right now. So literally just yesterday, an MSX student reached out to me, just sharing that his partner was having a little trouble figuring out how to make the most of the year here from her perspective. So I offered to, sit down and talk with them. I met with them yesterday afternoon, and I listened to his wife, tell me all about her background, and I learned about what things that she was interested in, and I was able to make some very specific recommendations to her, not just conceptually, but because I've been here for so long, and because I also have been, I grew up in this area too, I know a lot, not only about Stanford, but also about the resources in the local area. And so able to give her some really actionable things that were very aligned with what she was interested in doing. Last week, I had a mom in the program reach out to me saying, hey, I think it's time for my kids to start learning to swim, for my oldest to start learning to swim. Do you have any recommendations? Well, of course I have recommendations. So it tends to be more like subject to subject, hand to hand kinds of things. So philosophically, the way I do it is, at the start of school, we do a partner orientation. I try to reiterate to students that this experience is inclusive not only of the student, but of the partner and family as well. And I don't have a crystal ball. I don't know what every individual needs, but I do know that my mission is to make sure that every student knows that their whole family is welcome here for support, and our ears are open and our minds are pretty creative. We can probably come up with the right support mechanisms and recommendations.
Thank you for that. Jen, were you going to add something there?
I did. Student Life was great for partners, especially at the beginning, because they would host, these events or breakfasts or lunch. And it was a great way to be able to come and kind of meet some of the other partners and kind of feel comfortable when you would see them around campus and be able to talk to them. So Student Life was such a wonderful thing, especially at the beginning and throughout.
Thank you for that, Jen, for that addition. As we think about parenting, studying full-time, taking care of what your partner might want, we know it's going to be a juggling act. And so can you share, how did your family manage the time between being there for your kids, for your partner, but also the adequate time to the program? And how did you end up prioritizing that?
I think it was easier to be a parent at Stanford than it is anywhere else. Everything about Stanford made it easy. One thing we did is we would eat dinner first while the kids were out playing, because it was so hard to get them in. And so our own relationship, I think, really benefited from just like these little dinners every day that we'd share together. And then we'd bring the kids in and feed them. And then we set aside one day a week. So Sunday was our day, and that was just a family day. And it put a little more pressure on me to get my work done before. But those were sort of special times for us. In terms of parenting, the Graduate Community Center, we probably were there 2 or 3 nights a week, either eating at the restaurant or doing ballet classes or whatever classes we'd sign the kids up for. There was just, and then the weekends, we sort of realized if we take these long trips on the weekend to explore the area, it put a lot of pressure to get like behind in school and to play catch up. And there was so much on campus that we found like our happiest weekends, our best times as a family were going to sporting events, tailgates, museums, doing the little hikes around campus, and
running into other families and just sitting and talking for a while.
Yeah. So it was just like, in terms of parenting, it was really just a magical time as a parent where it felt actually easier and special, and I miss it. And I some of the things that I thought we had nailed as parents, now that we're not at Stanford, we're like, oh wait, that wasn't us. That was just a product of where we were. So anyways, it was a great time.
Thanks for sharing that, Matt. Both from the GSB's perspective, but also then from your family's perspective. So I want to start off with Courtney. I believe that there's a number of events and resources that partners get access to as being part of the community. So then, there's some of the kind of logistical ones. Well, maybe we don't need to touch on, but like access to like an on-campus mailroom or dry cleaning service. Like that's the unsexy stuff that like both students and partners get access to. But there are a number of things that, we allow our partners to take advantage of. So there's a couple that pop to my mind, but I'd love for you to speak to what are some of the kind of opportunities for a partner who's coming here to the program. I think you alluded to, or Jen alluded to a couple of them, but I'd love from your perspective, Courtney, to start off with.
Jen should definitely share her experience about Stanford Continuing Studies. That's the primary educational resource for like taking classes with like real Stanford faculty, real courses. Another resource that I love is, and you could actually take a look at this now, is Stanford for You. So if you literally put in like stanfordforyou.stanford.edu, I think that's a catch-all of all of the things going on, or not all of the things, because there's thousands of things, but many of the things going on campus that are open. I think Stanford has a pretty remarkable point of view about openness. So we really, our mission is to educate, right? And so we want to share those learning opportunities with as many people as we possibly can. And so Stanford for You is one of the top recommendations I have for partners to do, is to go to that website, sign up for the newsletter. It's a monthly newsletter, and you'll get like the performances, the seminars, the workshops, the conferences, just all put together there. The default is that those things are open. Same thing with our club related activities, like very specific to the program. There are about 60 or so student clubs that are chiefly run by the MBA students, but they're open to all of the GSB students. And the vast majority, like upwards of 95%, of their activities are also open to partners and families. Now, a lot of the programming isn't exactly appropriate for kids, but definitely appropriate for partners, and whether that's strictly social, parties, to, the more academic and professionally oriented things done through the career clubs.
Excellent. Thank you for that, Courtney. Jen, what would you like to add about kind of your experience?
There's something for everyone, really. There was continuing education for me and so many classes to choose from. It was kind of hard to decide what to focus on and what to take. And then if you're interested in yoga or the gym, or there's a rock climbing wall. And then for kids, they call it EV. So the family housing, they actually did ballet classes and art classes for the kids. We also connected, our kids did a French preschool and kindergarten in Miami, and we were able to find other kids in, the GSB community that were trying to keep their language going. So, and another partners that she spoke French. And so we all kind of got together. So it's just a great way to kind of connect with people from different cultures. One of the things that was really special is kind of celebrating holidays from everybody's country and culture. We really got to know other people that way, and we really loved that about it.
So I have two final questions here for this panel before we turn it over to our audience here. But Matt and Jen, while I recognize that you were not international students, you were domestic students, the international student experience can sometimes be a little bit different. So I'd love to have Courtney speak to that effect, and then invite you guys from what you observed from your classmates. But one of the things that I want to be transparent is, as an MSX student, if your partner or spouse does not have, will be coming on a student-sponsored visa, so they will not be able to continue working while they are in the MSX program, unless they happen to be to have the adequate citizenship and visa. And that's something that will, based on the visa processing times, is not something that usually changes during the MSX program, even if you apply at the start. So Courtney, can you please share if there are international partners and spouses, kind of what does that experience? Is it the same as to kind of what you were speaking to? Is there something else that might be that our prospective students might want to consider?
Sure, and I appreciate the note about the F2 visa. That's an unfortunate limitation of the F2 visa, which is what most of our international partners are here on. There's a big additional resource for international students, which is the Bechtel International Center. And the Bechtel International Center does a tremendous amount of programming. So in addition to the programming that Jen commented on, Bechtel does programming focused on the international community, both of students and their families. Everything from language practice tables weekly to really practical resources. Like they have a kitchen supply closet. So when you relocate, halfway around the world, maybe you can't bring all of your specialized kitchen equipment. And so to help international students initially get set up, they've got a borrowing closet that international students can use in those first couple of weeks. Kind of all points in between.
Thanks, Courtney. Matt, Jen, anything that you observed from some of your international family colleagues?
I think this is sort of on the same point, but man, we celebrated so many holidays that year. It was amazing. Most of them we didn't know that much about, and we got to learn about them. One of I think the highlights of my year was, there's a lot of question about what to do on Thanksgiving, and a lot of us stayed around, including a lot of international students. And so we had a combined Thanksgiving potluck, and it was 70 people. And we kind of had the campus to ourselves. And, we just sort of learned what are the traditions, what do we do? And we celebrated a lot of holidays together.
Yeah.
And it was really magical. We learned so much and came to appreciate so many new things and get to know people better. That was a real special experience, sort of the international community aspect of the MSX program.
Here's my final question, and then again, we'll turn it over to Q&A, is from all of your perspectives, so all three of you, what recommendations or guidance would you give families as they're considering whether or not to come to the Stanford MSX program and whether or not to bring their family?
I'll start, and I'll let Matt and Jen think a little bit, which is make a very intentional choice as partners. That this is something that you're doing as partners, and then commit to communicating about that choice. And it's a choice for each other, right? It has to be a good year for both parties in the couple. So make a commitment to communicating with each other about it and checking in. Don't just assume that it's going fine. There will certainly be many moments where it's not going fine. And if you don't intentionally turn toward each other and choose to communicate about it, choose to ask the question that you might be afraid of the answer of, not going fine is going to turn into worse. So that would be my advice, is to choose it for each other, and to have a real clear discussion about what would success look like. And, a year from now, what do we have to have experienced, accomplished, felt for this to be successful mutually, not just for me, the student, but for our family, for our partnership.
That's great. I think I have to kind of talk on that as well, because I think that, there was times where I had, to ask him, like, what do you need? Do you need time to study, or is this family time? Because I think that has to, you have to communicate that so each knows what they need. And sometimes I need help with the kids. So I think communication is huge, but I think, it was worth it. Any struggles we might've had or any issues, overall, like, we miss it. We wanted to stay longer. We loved being there, and we think it was a great experience. And we were sad it was only a year. So.
Yeah, I would say, in terms of bringing the family or not, I think if it's possible, it's worth it. And if you can live on campus, that's worth it. Just be part of that community, and every evening, be in those courtyards, or, have those friendships with neighbors. We think it's worth it to treat it like the whole family is at Stanford that year, insofar as that's possible. I think in the cases where it's not, I saw some of my classmates just do this in a really marvelous way. They found ways for their partners to feel like they were part of it, even if they were back at home. And sometimes that looked like, long weekends on campus, or they choose to spend their Thanksgiving break or their Christmas break on campus. when they were able to be there, just sort of to know what that experience is like. Join the WhatsApp groups for partners so that they know what's going on and what the community's talking about. And one thing that's interesting is sometimes the partners actually were the vehicle for the students' pivot. One of my classmates is now business partners with a partner of one of our classmates, or vice versa, where sort of the class. Anyways, I just think it's a wonderful way to make friends. It's a wonderful career move, and the community's special. And in so much as you can get your family there, I think it's awesome.
Thank you. Wow, excellent. Okay, we are officially turning it over to our audience. So Ying Yang has a question here of, I'd like to bring my daughters who are 9 and 6. Is there support or tips to find proper schooling for 1 year around the Stanford area? Courtney, can we start off with you?
Sure. Schools will start with where you're living. So Matt and Jen can talk about their process of enrolling their children in school. So start with where you're living locally, and then the resource through Stanford for support on schools is called the Work-Life Office. And you can see that resource now. It's worklife.stanford.edu to take a look. And Matt and Jen, can you comment on the process of enrolling your children in schools and selecting the right school?
Of course. It was actually a little scary because we weren't allowed to enroll the kids until we actually were physically on campus. And that made me a little nervous. But when we went to enroll them, there was no issues. They got into the school, on campus. Some had to go maybe a mile away, but it's very close.
And they're both good.
And they're both great schools. So it might seem a little intimidating, but it's very easy when you get there and you have your address.
Yeah, Stanford's very lucky that the public schools that are associated with the campus housing are very, very good schools. So it's very unusual that we see a student who chooses to send their child to private school.
Yeah. And actually our preschooler, so Bing is the nursery school there for the preschoolers, and it's full, except they leave some spots for MSX students that kind of get in late. So we were actually even able to get them into Bing, which is hard to get into, but it was very easy being an MSX student.
My kids
thank you.
Bing too.
So, and just to reassure everyone, so as an MSX student, you are guaranteed a spot for your children in the public school system. So at the Palo Alto Unified School District. So they are very familiar that MSX students are not able to move onto campus and establish residency until the summer. But there are spots at these public schools. When it comes to the daycare on campus, pre-elementary or high school even, you do have to apply to the particular daycare centers such as Bing. And again, we have, they are accustomed to having MSX students and their children enroll into these daycare centers. So you do have access to that, which is great. Raphael is asking a great question here. And so Courtney, would love for you to start off, and then again, Matt and Jen, what did you kind of see and experience? But what was that experience for couples who do not have children? How do you advise them, Courtney?
Well, if I was sitting across from you in my office with that question, I would first turn it back to you, Raphael, saying, well, what do you want it to be? What does your partner want it to be? Because that's kind of what we use as our guide. Some partners are on campus just all the time. Like it blurs together who's a student versus who's a partner, right? And they're so involved and so integrated. Other partners, hold themselves very separate from the experience. And so it's kind of a choose your own adventure thing because so much of what's happening on campus and is part of the experience is open to partners. It's really easy to plug into kind of as much as you want to plug into. So it's kind of a non-answer, but it really is true. It's kind of like, what do you want it to be? Because we have partners who are, so so involved, they're more involved than their student, right?
That's completely fair. Matt, Jen, what would you add?
I would just add, well, first of all, I think Courtney's answer is exactly right. And I saw couples do it both ways. I saw both, also socially, I saw some couples, they found other couples that they would just have dinners a couple times a week together. And then some just wanted to like come over to EV and hang out with all the families with kids and do dinners over there. And then some couples would go over to JMAC with the singles and sort of go out and party and have fun. And, you know, it was whatever you wanted it to be. I think they sort of had the freedom to choose any of them. So.
And maybe it's something helpful too, as you're thinking about this, is traditionally it's been fairly consistent year over year in our MSX communities, but about a third of our students come, they're single, about a third come with a partner or a spouse, and then it's actually about a third that come with their partner and children. So just so you know, there is going to be community for you no matter what your family dynamic is going to be. Thomas is wondering, you know, with a family of 3 kids who living on campus, is a car necessary, or is there public transportation that's readily available?
About her car died.
we had a car, but we rarely used it. I think we would use it once every 2 weeks.
Yeah.
The public transportation isn't great though. There's, you know,
Zip cars though.
Yeah, there's Zip cars. We use Zip car a lot actually.
Our car died a month before our baby was due, and we didn't have a car, and we just used the Zip cars, and it worked out great. Yeah,
the Zip cars was really nice. I imagine they're still there. And then Stanford does have a bus around campus if you just want to kick around campus. But we found that the best thing was just bikes. We biked everywhere, and we could go into Palo Alto. We could go anywhere on campus.
Yeah.
We had small kids, but that was the way for us. We felt like we'd go anywhere we wanted. Mm-hmm. And on the rare occasion on a weekend where we wanted to bounce out of town, we would do a Zip car, you know, or our own car sometimes. Yeah. Sometimes we just took a Zip car because it was easier than.
Excellent. I'm glad that you touched on the Zip car, Matt and Jen. How about medical facilities for adults and children? You know, are they available? And can you speak to, obviously, Jen, you had to took advantage of some of the medical facilities, but can we speak to that a bit?
Yeah, there were, I think, 4 of us that had babies at the time. And 3 went on campus to Stanford. I had all mine at birth centers. So we chose to do a birth center. So there's lots of options. There's, you know, right across the street is Stanford Health. And then you have lots of other options around. So it kind of just depends on what you're looking for. But that's definitely readily available and close by.
Yeah, a lot of options and a lot of good options.
Yeah.
Yep. The 2 major ones that our students use, there's the Stanford Hospitals and Clinics, which is, you know, the level 1 trauma center for like the most extreme stuff. They're there. And then there's also right across the street from Stanford University is the Palo Alto Medical Foundation, which is the other major provider and a great resource for urgent care. If it's not quite going to the emergency room, that a lot of people use Palo Alto Medical Center. If you are coming to or planning to come and you have a more complicated medical situation, that is never too early to start looking for you know, the appropriate providers, and the Vaden Student Health Center can help you with referrals to finding providers, whether it's within or beyond the Stanford system.
Excellent point. Thank you for mentioning Vaden. I'm so glad that you did, Courtney. Uma, I'm going to answer her question here quickly, just directly, of possibilities for kids in high school to get admission in and around Stanford. So as I was mentioning, as a incoming student, if your child is of high school age, they're guaranteed a spot at the public high school in Palo Alto. So that would not be a problem. We cannot guarantee admission into Stanford University by being an MSX student, but your child would have access to the public high school system, similar to elementary.
It's just a matter of paperwork, right? Get your address,
Correct.
Get your paperwork done. then it's fine. The local high school to Stanford University is Palo Alto High School, directly across the street from Stanford University. If you live off campus a little further away, but still in Palo Alto, the high school would likely be Gunn High School.
Correct. So can partners attend any class from in the MBA and MSX programs just to listen or to audit? And Courtney, go ahead, please.
Yeah, so I'll answer that question in a policy-based way, and then I'd love for Matt and Jen to comment more experientially about what you experienced. So the outside of continuing studies, the regular courses through Stanford University are not open to what we call auditing. So that's for a non-student to take them, and by that it's like start to finish, take them, be there every day. So they're not open. They're not open for that. I can't do that. A partner can't do that. It's only an enrolled student who can do that. That said, I think in practice, you will find that at least at the GSB, many of our faculty are very open to having a partner sit in on a lecture, a few sessions, that sort of thing, and that our faculty are, wanting to include. It depends on the seats. As long as there's a seat available, they can allow a guest to sit in. But the hard limit is that they cannot allow a partner to audit start to finish the whole course. But Matt and Jen, talk about what your experience is, because I know there's like a soft market of what actually happens beyond policy.
Yeah. Go ahead.
I was able to go to some of the View from the Tops, and it was the Patagonia CEO that time. And it was just great to kind of be on campus and listen and be involved that way. I did have to register for it, and there had to be a seat, like you said. And then do you want to speak about when Whitney went to class?
Yeah. So in terms of there's View from the Top. There's also the lecture series that they do at the auditorium. Those are always just wonderful. The View from the Top's actually pretty easy to get tickets. I mean, shouldn't say easy, but you made it in a number of times. And then in terms of the classes, the policy is the policy, but man, I saw siblings, parents, grandparents. We had a grandma show up one time. They really, the professors are, especially in sort of the MSX core classes, that it's kind of an open door to when you have a guest in town to let them pop in. I thought they were very cool about it. We'd sort of sponsored an undergraduate student from Haiti, and she came out to visit us. And so I got to let her sit into just a gnarly microeconomics class with us. And it's a really cool thing to be able to pop in and out of lectures. And, even if you just go to one lecture, the guest speakers and the content, it's so good. It's always worth it if you can sneak into a class.
Yeah, I think the underlying thing there is it's usually ad hoc. So it's not guaranteed by any faculty member. It's definitely not the policy, but we find that oftentimes it is available, again, on that ad hoc basis, not the consistent, you're in the class start to finish every single, for the entire duration of the quarter. We have a question about sports. And so Matt, Jen, you identified a bit about like ballet and whatnot, but can you speak to Stanford's access to sports for children?
I don't know if we know a lot.
I know.
The one thing that was great, and this isn't like team sports stuff, but the rec center on campus has a rock climbing wall. There's a couple of swimming pools. And so there are a bunch of resources on campus, both for students and families. They're just really great. I know there were sort of some classes, dance and stuff that were done through EV, held at the Graduate Community Center. I don't know a lot about team sports. I'm sure Courtney probably can answer that better than we can. We didn't do that.
Our kids were Aubrey was 6 or 7. So our kids were pretty young. There wasn't a lot of team sports elementary for that age. She did do, an after school running, like a run some kind of club. And then we had her in a French after school tutoring thing at one of the other elementary schools. And then we actually took advantage of the YMCA a little bit for swimming. And although they do have swimming on campus too. So we did both, but
yeah, the Y is great.
There's so many just different opportunities, but you do need to research or talk to Student Life about what is best for your age student and what they're looking for.
I'll just add that Stanford during the summer has a huge program of sports camps and conditioning and all of that stuff for youth. That's predominantly a summer thing, because during the academic year, frankly, it's Stanford's athletics teams that are using a lot of the facilities. So there isn't organized team stuff for children during the regular academic year outside of the summer. That said, if your children are involved or want to be involved in team sports, the primary resource for that will either be your child's school or the community rec resource in your recreational resource in your community. So Palo Alto Recreation does a tremendous amount, both team and like individual kinds of things. Menlo Park does as well. Redwood City does. Mountain View, all of the local communities that our students tend to live in, they have really robust like public rec programs, and that's where you'll find a lot of team sports. But then there's also leagues, like the major league for soccer around here, recreational soccer, is AYSO. But then the soccer is also a very big deal here. So there's also competitive traveling teams too that students, that children can audition, try out for.
Excellent.
My kids are involved in performing arts, so that's why I say audition.
Excellent. I want to be very cognizant of your time, and I want to ask these two final questions from the audience, and then I will be happy to stay on for a few additional minutes to answer some last minute questions. Surat's asking a great question about how about parents who visit students? So as an international student, will his parents be allowed to visit and stay for a month-long period?
So not in campus housing. So campus housing has a limitation on how many continuous nights you can have a visitor for. And off the top of my head, I cannot recall what it is. That said, we do wind up having students, particularly international students, who have family come and stay for extended periods of time. And they arrange an Airbnb, usually someplace off campus for the parents to stay. Your campus housing is also going to be too small to feel comfortable for having extra guests staying there for a long period of time.
Excellent, thank you. So Gracie is a young mom with a 3.5-year-old son, and she's thinking about the MBA and the MSX program at the GSB, and how would it be different or same or similar for the family and partner experience between the two programs?
There are a lot more families in the MSX program. We see a higher percentage of students with children significantly. Obviously, the MBA population is a larger population in terms of total number of students, but the percentage of families is much higher in MSX. Our MBA family, I work with MBA and MSX students. Our MBA families tend to express some jealousy about the quantity and quality of the community for families in the MSX program, just because there's so many of them, and you find so many peers in the same life stage relative to having a family. That's I think the major point of difference. But Matt and Jen, what's your point of view?
I think for the partners and the kids, they kind of mix, right? My kids became friends with another family that they were doing an MBA. And it kind of, they would still come. We had partner picnics like every Thursday or something, and those families would come too. It wasn't just MSX.
Yeah, I think if you were going to do the MBA, I'd sneak into the MSX family social WhatsApp group. And
we had quite a few that did that.
Yeah, we did. And the other part is, if you live in EV, like our kid's best friends, I think he was doing a PhD in some other program on campus. And so there is a community outside of just where you go to classes that, you'll find just by virtue of living in EV. So, but MSX for families, it is sort of a magical group because so many of the students are in that sort of phase of life.
Right.
Excellent. I think that was a wonderful ending to this. So I just want to say thank you, Matt, Jen, and Courtney, for your wonderful insights, your stories. I really appreciate it. I speak on behalf of all of the attendees. This was wonderful. So thank you for taking part of your day today to join us. It was great. And I'm seeing lots of like good love, both in the Q&A and also in the chat. So thank you so much. And I hope you guys have a great rest of your Wednesdays.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Bye.